Hey everybody, welcome back to Weaponized CAD. I'm your host Danny, and today we are talking about blocks. Now there are three different types of blocks. There's block, there's a right block, and there's a dynamic block. We are going to cover blocks and right blocks in this video. So the block command is used in cases where you need to take a series of objects, turn it into one object, to be able to copy it around and rotate it and manipulate it. Think of an office chair. Office chairs have arms, legs, wheels, a back, a seat, adjustment knobs if you want to get crazy. Instead of having all of those pieces as individual objects in your drawing, you can take all of those pieces and combine them into what's called a block. So let's use the bat symbol. The bat symbol right now is one object. It's one single closed polyline. Let's say we are going to just scale this down. SC for the scale command, select the object, right click. It's going to ask us for the base point, click in the middle. Now, I don't want to scale down the bat symbol to a smaller size. What I want to do is scale with copy. So down here in the command line, we have the option to specify the scale factor, which is only going to scale the bat symbol, or we can hit the copy button. So let's hit that. Now I have the ability to keep the original bat symbol in place and create a new bat symbol at a smaller or a larger scale, depending on where I pull my cursor. Okay, two bat symbols. Looking at the properties, polyline 2, both of them are closed. Closed is not important right now. What we're going to do is we're going to type block, B-L-O-C-K, bat symbol. Now within the block definition, it's going to ask you for a name. We named it bat symbol. It's going to ask you for the base point of the block. The base point is the point of insertion. So let's say we wanted the bat symbol to be inserted right in the middle. That's going to be our insertion point. I'm just clicking an arbitrary spot in the middle of the bat symbols. Next thing we need to do is we need to say objects. We can either specify on screen or we can just click this select objects button, and we just want to grab both of our bat symbols and right click. Now, underneath the objects, we have the opportunity to keep the two bat symbol polylines as they are, just as polylines. That's what retain does. What it's doing is we're creating a block definition of these two polylines, and we can either keep the original line work and build the block, or we can convert the original line work to a block as well, or you can delete it. So it'll create the block and delete the information that we just selected. Now, over here in behavior, you can set your block to be annotative. In this case, we don't really want to do that because there's no text or dimensions or anything that would be controlled by the annotation scale. Scale uniformly, that just means you can't stretch it in a weird set of dimensions. So if I say scale uniformly, you hold the mouse over that button, specifies whether or not the block reference is prevented from being non-uniformly scaled, meaning that when we bring this block in a minute, it's going to give us the opportunity to stretch it further left, right, squeeze it top down, or make it really tall and really thin. I just want to scale it uniformly because it's going to maintain this exact shape, and it's not going to ask us to scale it. Settings for the block unit, we're going to just keep this as inches. Open in block editor, we'll get to that in a little bit. I'm not going to check that. I'm just going to click OK. Now at this point, it's like, okay, what the heck did we just do? We type insert, I-N-S-E-R-T. It's going to bring up the blocks dockable menu. Now, this was just introduced in the last few years, and a lot of us that have been using CAD for a long time do not care for this. This is good, but it's not as good as the original way. So what we're looking at here is a series of tabs. In the current drawing, our bat symbol shows up. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to type ClassicInsert. ClassicInsert is going to show me the architectural tick that was from the dimensions we had put in a previous episode, because that's also a block, and it's going to show our bat symbol. So I'm going to click the bat symbol. It's going to ask me a couple questions here. Insertion point, I want to specify on screen, which means that wherever I click is where it's going to place the bat symbol. The scale is unchecked, but you'll notice that whatever we change the X value to, the Y and the Z are going to have to follow because the block was built uniformly scaled. If we hadn't checked that, we would have the opportunity to make X10, Y2, Z5. The Z dimension doesn't matter because there's no depth to this. It's just 2 polylines. But if we had a depth, we could create depth to it. Rotation, specify on screen. That's going to let us place the block and then rotate it however we want. And the block units is what was down at the bottom of the block dialog box. So in here, select the bat symbol, specify on screen, click OK. Now you'll notice it's going to be attached to our cursor at whatever point we selected when we created that block. So you remember I said I'm just going to choose an arbitrary point inside both of the objects. That's where it's attached. So if I single left click and I hit F8 to turn ortho off, before it actually places this block, it's going to ask me for a rotation angle. You can type a rotation angle or you can just eyeball it. So let's say 45. And there it is. Now, if I select these are 2 separate polylines because we didn't tell it to convert them to a block. If I select this, it's one object and it's a block reference. So now let's say I copy this over. I copy it over 3 times and we're going to pan over here. I'm going to double click this block. And what it's going to do is it's going to bring up the edit block definition dialog box. I'm going to select our bat symbol, which should already be selected because that's what we double clicked. And I'm going to click OK. It's going to throw us into the block editor. Now this is AutoCAD as we see it. The only difference is that the background is different to indicate that you are somewhere else. Let's say we wanted to put in a line across here. I'm going to put a line across here. Line command, line across here. So we added 3 lines to this block. If I click the Save Block button, it's going to save it. And then I'm going to click Close Block Editor. And now look at our blocks. These 3 blocks now have that line work in it. And the reason that this is powerful is because you'll design something as a block and then maybe at some point have to go back and adjust it or change it or make it look different than it was when you started. And if you have that block in your drawing 1,000 times, all you do is you edit one and it updates all 1,000 blocks. That is why blocks are so cool. It's a fast way to group objects together. It can be text, it can be dimensions, it can be line work, circles, arcs, polylines. It doesn't matter. You can turn anything you want into a block. Hatches can be inside there too. And if you ever needed to update, say, 1,000 chairs, only have to double click on the one chair, double click, click OK, say, nope, that line work doesn't need to be there anymore. Instead of clicking Save Block, I'm just going to click Close Block Editor, and it's going to ask me, it's going to say, you have not saved your changes. Do you want to discard them and close the block editor, which will throw us back to the original with the red line work, or click Save Changes to bat symbol. We save the changes. All 3 of these are now the same without the line work. And it doesn't matter what rotation angle they're at. It doesn't matter what they're scaled to. If I use the scale command and scale this guy up, it doesn't matter what I do to the actual block itself, as long as I don't do it within the editor. When you're using the block editor, that's what changes how all of the blocks look. So if we scaled it up in the block editor and saved it, all of these bat symbols would be bigger or smaller based on the scale that we added or changed within the block. So really that's blocks, just plain blocks. Now, right blocks is W block. What right block does is it allows you to take information from your drawing and pull it out as a block, but pull it into its own DWG file. AutoCAD uses DWG files. That's what we've been working in this whole time. You can see it up at the top. CAD Season 0, Episode 9.dwg. What it's asking here is, what do we want to create a block from? What do we want the base point to be? What objects? And the difference is that instead of asking for a name, it's asking us for a file name and path. So it's the same thing, but the difference is a right block is its own drawing file. It's off to the side of your main drawing that you're working in. When you just create a block within a drawing, that block only lives in the drawing that you created it in, unless you use the tool that I'm going to cover next, because it was requested and it is super powerful. So really that's it for blocks. It's taking line work, dimensions, text, rectangles, circles, ellipses, hatches, boundary polylines, all the things we've covered up until this point, and grouping them together into one single movable object. So if there were 1,000 things drawn inside of this, it's still only going to have that single grip, because that's the insertion point of the block itself. So really that's it for blocks. Blocks are very simple and very, very powerful. Questions and comments, drop them in the channel anywhere. I'll see them regardless of where you put them. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.